The mountains were bleeding again. At least that's how it looked from the windshield. Streaks of red sun through the fog, glinting off the snow-crusted ridges. The road was barely a road anymore. Cracked asphalt gave way to gravel, then frozen dirt, then nothing but a narrow path through pine trees tall enough to blot out the sky. Dr. Miriam Locke leaned forward in her seat, hands tight on the wheel. The GPS had died 10 minutes ago. The radio was just static now, and her phone hadn't had signal since she passed a sign reading, "Welcome to Ashvale, Est, 1821. Come for the peace, stay forever." Someone had scratched out the last part and scrawled over it in red paint. "You stay because it takes you." Ashvale lay in a natural valley like a wound sutured shut by ridges and cliffs. The town square was a cross-shaped loop of ancient buildings with crumbling signs. A boarded-up general store, a skeletal diner, a post office with shattered windows. There were no stop signs, no lights, no sounds. She drove past a school playground overgrown with brown weeds. One of the swings moved, slowly, creaking in a wind that hadn't yet arrived. Her grandmother's cabin was exactly where she remembered it, on the edge of the forest, past the dried-up creek bed, cloaked in birch trees. The shutters hung crooked, the porch sagged, but it was still there. Miriam parked, grabbed her duffel and climbed the stairs. Each step groaned. The key under the mat was still there. Her grandmother always said, "Lock the door, but never throw away the key." She turned it. The door opened by itself. Inside, dust coated everything like snowfall. Sheets covered the furniture. An old smell wafted out. Earth, mildew, something like old iron. She uncovered the couch and coughed as a cloud of it rose. A photo hung above the fireplace, her mother as a child, standing in front of the cabin. Her eyes had been scratched out, she frowned. Looked closer, it wasn't scratched, it was burned. 2 perfect circles of black. As if someone had seared them off with a hot poker. Something moved in the reflection of the picture glass behind her. She turned, nothing there. Then came a knock. The front door creaked open. A child stood there, barefoot in the snow. A boy no older than 8. Pale skin, hair matted with pine needles. "Are you her?" he asked. "Who?" "The bone doctor." Miriam blinked. "Who told you that?" "The Hollow Man," the boy whispered and ran back into the trees. Nightfall. That night, she dreamed of her mother. In the dream, she was standing at the foot of Miriam's bed, hair dripping with rain. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then she reached forward and peeled her face off like wet paper. Miriam woke to the sound of whispering. Not in her head, in the walls. She searched the house until she found it. A wooden chest beneath the floorboards in the pantry. Inside were bundled letters, yellowed news clippings, and a leather-bound book labelled in ornate scrawl, Ledger of the Lost. She opened it. Names, hundreds. Each had a date, not birth dates, disappearance dates. Many from Ashvale. Dozens were from this year, and on one page scrawled in shaky ink, "They walk at dusk, but they don't walk alone." Miriam's own name was on the next page with tomorrow's date. Miriam woke to frost on the inside of her windows. The fireplace had died sometime during the night, and her breath misted in the frigid air. The house groaned, not from settling, but like something was walking across the roof. She pulled on a coat and stepped onto the porch, boots crunching into the snow. The forest was too quiet, the birds were gone. Then she saw them. Figures, dozens, standing motionless just inside the tree line. Men, women, children, all barefoot. All staring at her with empty expressions and open mouths, silent as if caught mid-scream. When she blinked, they were gone. Only the snow remained, but the footprints didn't melt. She needed answers. So she climbed the icy ridge toward St. Isidora's, the old chapel at the north end of town. Her grandmother used to warn her, "Don't go near the black church, it remembers voices." Its spire was crooked now, leaning like a snapped neck. Doors creaked open as if inviting her. Inside, the pews were charred, the stained glass windows shattered. The altar had been defaced with a crude symbol, an open circle filled with teeth. As she moved toward the front, something crunched underfoot. Teeth, real ones. Human molars scattered across the floor like rice at a wedding. Then came the humming, low and guttural, from beneath the altar. She bent down and saw the trapdoor. It was open. The local lawman had survived every horror Ashvale threw at him. Sheriff Cal Holt, face creased with years and nicotine, found Miriam walking back from the church and offered her coffee from his truck's thermos. "You shouldn't have come back," he said simply. You stir things up, things that ain't ever been buried right. Miriam asked about the Ledger of the Lost. He paled. My wife's name's in there, he whispered. Vanished 12 years ago, right after she told me the mine was whispering again. He looked toward the mountains. They say the Hollow Man sleeps below the town. He was never human, just wore our skin long enough to be let in. Miriam showed him the page with her name and tomorrow's date. Then we don't have long, he said, and started the truck. That night, Miriam studied the symbol from the church. She found it again in one of the clippings, an 1863 article about a cave discovered during mining expansion. 5 men entered, none returned. The cave was sealed and the town called it an act of God. But her grandmother had written a note on the edge of the page. Not God, older, hungrier. The fireplace sparked back to life on its own. Flames roared higher, then turned black. A figure stepped from the fire, tall, shadow-wrapped, mouthless, skin stretched like wax. Black liquid dripped from its eyes. Miriam couldn't move. The figure raised a hand. Her skin began to crack, tiny fissures snaking up her arms like dry earth. Then the room blinked dark. The figure was gone, but her arms still bore the cracks. They were spreading. The next morning, Miriam's arms were worse. The cracks had crept to her shoulders. Thin, grey, spiderweb fractures in her flesh that didn't bleed but pulsed like veins filled with ash. She went to the Ashvale Town Hall, its roof half collapsed and its windows gone. Inside, she found old mining records, yellowed by time. One file was marked Sector 0, access sealed. Inside was a hand-drawn map of a mining tunnel beneath the town. At the centre was a red X labelled only Origin Chamber. Below it, in faded pencil, Do not enter, it sings. She copied the map. The tunnel entrance was at the back of the abandoned slaughterhouse. The slaughterhouse loomed like a dead whale on the edge of town. Its doors had been chained, but the lock was rusted through. Inside, the air was thick with rot. Old hooks still hung from rails in the ceiling. The floors were blackened, grooved from years of dragging. She followed the map into the back hall. As she passed a room labelled Processing, the walls began to whisper. Miriam! Bone and dust and bone and dust. She's inside you. We smell her. She shoved open the freezer door. Behind rows of rotted meat was a trapdoor bolted shut with rusted iron. Her name was carved into it, fresh. She opened it. The ladder descended into black. She climbed for minutes, flashlight bobbing, her breath condensed on stone walls. Then, a tunnel. Rail tracks stretched endlessly. The mine was bigger than she imagined. She walked. After 20 minutes, the whispering returned, this time from ahead. It wasn't voices, not human ones. It was memory. She saw visions. Her mother screaming, strapped to a stone table, her grandmother reading from the ledger in a circle of candles, the boy from the forest, flayed alive but still smiling. The tunnel widened into a chamber, at the centre a pit, an open wound in the world, and something inside it was breathing. The air here was thick, alive. Her flashlight flickered and died. Then the pit spoke. Not in words, in thoughts. Images. The settlers opening the mine. Unearthing a stone coffin filled with a being made of teeth and dark light, trying to rebury it, but it had already tasted freedom. It had no name, only hunger. Each generation it marked one family, the Locks. Your marrow, it said in her mind. Your blood remembers, your mother fed me. Now you will. Hands, small, skeletal reach from the edge of the pit. The boy again. Gracie Elwood. Her grandmother, all trying to pull her in. She ran. Miriam burst into the sheriff's station, panting, covered in ash and bloodless cuts. Holt had already packed a duffel bag and cocked his shotgun. I knew it would come to this, he said grimly. I kept the map. I knew someone'd return to the mine. I saw it, Miriam whispered. It's not alive, not dead. It's beneath us all. Holt tossed her a revolver. Then let's bury it again. Old school. But outside, the town had already changed. Windows shattered, roads cracked, ash was falling from the sky like snow, and the townsfolk, they were walking, blank-eyed, mouths sewn shut with thorny vines. A procession to the mine. The hunger was waking. The people of Ashvale were moving, in silence, dozens of them, young, old, some missing limbs, others with faces wrapped in thorned vines, walked slowly down Main Street, heading toward the outskirts where the mine sat beneath the ridge. Miriam and Sheriff Holt stood behind the station's boarded windows, watching. They're not people anymore, Holt said. They're echoes, skins. Where are they going? She asked. To welcome it. Every 70 years it reaches out, pulls something fresh into its fold. Miriam's heart sank. The date in the ledger. Her name. She was this cycle's offering. But the town was going too. All of it. That night, Miriam dreamed of the pit again. But this time it rose. A column of teeth and eyes and bone crawling upward like a serpent wearing human faces. At its peak stood the Hollow Man, an eyeless, mouthless creature wearing a preacher's coat and a miner's helmet. He raised his arms, and the town bent with him. She woke screaming. From the porch she could see him, standing in the churchyard, backlit by flickering flames, surrounded by those silent townsfolk. They all turned to look at her. The Hollow Man tilted his head, then pointed directly at her window. At dawn, the earth groaned. A sound like a mountain exhaling cracked through the valley. The north ridge split, stone tumbling like bones. Trees fell like matchsticks. Dust surged through the air like smoke. From beneath the ridge, a vast opening had formed, a crater of gnashing light and shadow. Sheriff Holt gunned the truck down the hill, Miriam beside him. They stopped at the edge of the sinkhole. The mine had broken open, it was free, and now it was calling. From inside the crater, a chorus of whispers rose. "Miriam, daughter of Marrow, come home." Miriam found a letter among her grandmother's things. When the seal breaks, the circle must be drawn again. Blood of the marked, ash of the fed, bone of the last survivor. Only the lock may end the lock. Sheriff Holt shook his head. It wants a ritual, but maybe we can twist it, force it shut. They gathered what they needed. Candles, bones from the churchyard, Holt's own blood. In the old barn behind the cabin, they drew a circle with charred bone dust. Miriam stepped inside, and the air froze. The shadows around the barn began to twitch. The Hollow Man was coming. The barn shook. Candles blew sideways. From the corners, shapes emerged. Faces Miriam knew. The boy, the girl, her grandmother, her mother, all hollowed, mouths too wide, eyes void of thought. Sheriff Holt fired at the Hollow Man as it entered, once, twice, 3 times. Nothing slowed it. It pointed at Miriam. The circle ignited. Pain shot through her spine, her bones pulsing like tuning forks. The cracks on her skin split wider. From her mouth a sound emerged, not hers. A scream older than time. It was her voice and not. She fell to her knees. The Hollow Man reached for her, and then stopped. A voice echoed from behind it. "You don't belong here." Sheriff Holt had stepped into the circle. It took him instead. Claire Mendel's GPS announced, arrived at destination, but there was no house in sight. Only a gravel pull-off, thick trees, and a long, winding driveway that disappeared into brush. She slowed the car and leaned out the window. No welcome sign. No mailbox. Just the glint of a rusty gate, half sunk into a crooked fence. She tapped the address again on her phone. 1787 Glass Holloward, West Virginia, correct. She sighed, cut the engine, and stepped into the stillness. The forest pressed in on all sides. It was quiet in a way only deep country could be. No cars, no voices, not even birds. Just the creak of trees and the sound of her own boots crunching gravel. The gate swung open with a groan when she pushed. Claire had found the listing online 3 weeks earlier. Secluded mountain guest house for writers, artists, and those seeking peace. No distractions, no technology, just silence. It had dozens of 5-star reviews, all recent. The host, someone named Gideon, responded to her inquiry within minutes. Professional, warm, reassuring. You'll have the place to yourself. It's very quiet this time of year. Bring warm clothes, the mountain nights bite hard. She liked the sound of that. Now, as the guest house came into view, she wasn't so sure. The house was a narrow A-frame structure, almost Scandinavian in design. Pine walls, sharply angled roof, a chimney curling lazy smoke into the sky. The porch had a single rocking chair. The windows were shuttered. A chopped woodpile leaned against the siding. It was fine, but something about it felt staged, like it had been arranged for photos but not lived in. The key was under the mat, just as promised. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. Warm, clean, smelled faintly of cedar. A kitchenette, 2 armchairs, a loft bed upstairs. Bookshelves full of old novels. A handwritten note on the table. "Welcome, Claire. Take your time, breathe deep, let the silence do its work." Gideon, she smiled faintly. Maybe this really was what she needed. The first day passed quietly. She unpacked, read, made tea, and wandered behind the house where the woods opened to a stream. She took photos of stones and bark textures. She even laughed when she saw an old deer skull nailed to a tree. Creepy, sure, but also rustic. Local flavour. By 10:30 p.m, the house had grown too quiet. She turned on the small radio in the corner. Static. She rotated the dial slowly. Back in '89, when the Mendel girl disappeared. She froze, her name. The voice crackled out and cut to silence. She turned the dial again, more static. Then she heard it, a knock. 3 soft raps on the front door. She crept down the stairs, robe wrapped tight. The porch was empty. She turned on the light. No one there, just the woods. When she stepped back inside, the rocking chair on the porch creaked behind her. Rocking, slowly. She shut and locked the door. Claire emailed Gideon that morning using the provided satellite modem. Is there wildlife that might come up to the house? Something knocked on the door last night. No reply. The modem light blinked red. She shook it, then tried again. Also, the radio picked up something strange. Might just be interference. Still nothing. She sighed and decided to go for a hike. Anything to burn off the nerves. She followed a trail marked with red twine and found herself deep in the woods after an hour. Then movement. A man. Far off, standing still between the trees, not wearing hunter orange, just standing there facing her. She raised a hand. Hello? He didn't move. She turned and walked briskly back to the house. Back inside, her phone still had no bars. The modem still blinked red. That night, the knocks came again. This time at every wall. Not loud, but insistent. Like something was circling the house. She didn't sleep. She hiked out to the driveway, planning to leave. Her car's tires were flat. Not one, all 4. Clean punctures, not slashed, but drilled. Her breath caught. She called 911. The call wouldn't go through. The phone made a low-pitched tone and froze. The screen turned blue, not black, not the Apple boot screen, just solid blue. Then, no service, no exit, no return. Gideon Ellison. The message disappeared. Claire dropped the phone. When she looked back at the guest house, the rocking chair was facing the window now. She didn't turn on the lights, sat by the fire, knife in hand. At 1:13 a.m, she heard the creak of footsteps on the porch. Then something slid under the door. A photo of her, sleeping, dated yesterday. Claire didn't sleep that night. She sat curled in the corner of the couch, facing the door, clutching the knife from the kitchen drawer, a sad, flimsy thing with a plastic handle. Her eyes stayed locked on the single photo that had been slid under the door. A Polaroid. Her sleeping. Date stamped the night before. She studied every inch of it. It was taken from inside the loft, looking down at her curled in bed. But she was alone. She had been alone, unless someone had already been inside. By dawn, Claire's brain felt like it was breaking down. Sleep deprivation blurred the edges of the room. Every creak felt intentional. She kept checking the windows, the chimney, even the cabinets. And then the modem light turned green. Just like that, no blinking, no warning. An email appeared in her inbox. From Gideon@glasshollowhouse.net, subject read wildlife, 4:44 a.m. Dear Claire, there are no animals in these woods. Not anymore. Please avoid opening the basement door. I've left additional instructions in the pantry. Trust the silence. It's not lying to you. Warmly, Gideon. Claire read it 3 times. No animals? What did that mean? Basement door? She hadn't seen one. The house was too small. She got up, heart pounding, and walked slowly to the kitchen. The pantry was just a shallow nook with shelves of dry goods. Nothing unusual at first. Canned peaches, saltines, rice. But when she removed the bottom shelf, there it was. A trapdoor set flush with the floorboards. Wooden. No handle. Just a metal ring sunk into the grain. She hesitated, then pulled. The trapdoor opened with a sigh, revealing a narrow staircase made of stone. Not concrete. Stone. Cut and mortared. Cold air rose up from the darkness. She closed it. Fast. Still rattled, Claire checked the pantry again and found a binder tucked behind the soup cans. On the cover it simply said, House Log Volume 3. Inside, handwritten journal entries. Different pens, different handwriting styles, dated sporadically over decades. March 17th, 1972, stayed 5 nights, heard the tapping. 4th night someone whispered from the fireplace. I didn't light it again. October 4th, 1988, the host's voice came from the woods. He isn't real. I left the food offering like they said. It wasn't enough. August 1st, 1999. 3rd guest this summer has gone missing. We've sealed the basement again. That thing speaks in perfect mimicry now. January 12th, 2011. If you're reading this, Claire, leave tonight, no matter the cost. Claire's breath caught. her name, in a 14-year-old entry. She tried again to hike out, even without the car. She walked for what felt like hours along the gravel road, trying to follow her GPS's breadcrumb trail. But somehow she arrived back at the house, twice. No turns, no trails, just back. The forest had looped around her. Later, curled in the rocking chair with a blanket and a cup of tea she barely trusted, Claire tried the radio again. This time it clicked on without static. A voice spoke, calm, old. "You were chosen, Claire. There are patterns. Don't you see them? 1973, 1993, 2013, the threes. Every 20 years, the house chooses a voice. This year, it's you. You'll find the rest in the basement. You can hear them, can't you?" The transmission cut off. Then the doorknob turned, slowly, back and forth. Not knocking this time, not testing, entering. Claire didn't wait. She ran to the trapdoor and flung it open. Down into the dark, the stairs were uneven, cold. The stone walls pressed close on both sides, and the smell was unbearable. Earth, rot, and old rusted iron. A soft hum rose from below. When her foot touched the dirt floor at the bottom, the overhead trapdoor slammed shut and locked. She was sealed in, but she wasn't alone. To her left, a hallway lit by dim bulbs led deeper underground. Each bulb flickered with a strange pulse, as if they were breathing. To her right, shelves lined with artifacts, old photos, cassette tapes, small carved figures, and at the very end, a wall of names. Hundreds, written in charcoal, some crossed out, others circled. Her name was there. Claire Mendel, circled 3 times. A sound echoed from the dark hallway. "Claire, come see. It's your turn now." Claire turned toward the voice, her breath catching in her throat. It came from the hallway, distant, almost casual, but unmistakably hers. Not just her name, her voice. "Claire, come see." It wasn't an echo. It wasn't someone calling her. It was her, mimicked perfectly. She stepped forward. The corridor seemed far longer than it should have been. The light bulbs dimmed with each step, retreating into a dull orange glow. The air grew colder, wetter, like she was descending through time itself. Faint scratching sounds danced along the stone walls. Whispers. She couldn't understand the words, but the cadence felt rehearsed, ancient, as if she were walking into a story already written. A doorway appeared at the end of the hall, made of thick wood, reinforced with wrought iron. Someone had carved a sigil into the centre, a circle of thorns surrounding what looked like an open mouth. Above it, handwritten in blackened chalk, "Speak not to the voice beyond the wall." Claire opened the door. Inside was a small chamber, low ceiling, circular walls, and a pedestal in the centre. Atop the pedestal sat a reel-to-reel tape recorder, already running, and a chair, and someone in it. She was slumped over, thin and dry like a husk. A cassette wire was still wrapped tightly around her neck. Her skin had gone papery grey. But her lips were stretched in a final, unnatural smile. Her eyes were wide open. Staring at Claire, the tape recorder clicked and began to play. "My name is Marie Fenton. I was the voice in 1993. If you're hearing this, then the house has chosen you. There's something buried beneath this forest. It doesn't speak, it remembers, it uses our memories, our dreams. When you hear yourself, it's already too late. You must finish the ritual. If not, it becomes you." Claire felt the words settle into her bones. The voice. Every 20 years. Marie. 1993. Someone else, 1973. And now her. 2023. She searched the small room. There were spiral-bound notebooks, yellowed and brittle with age, each labelled with a year, each marked with a different name. 1953, Peter Wiles. 1973, Daniel Leary. 1993, Marie Fenton. 2013. 2023, Claire Mendel. She flipped open Marie's. The hunger lives in the earth. It chooses a tongue every cycle. A vessel to wear, a mind to twist. That's what the guest house is. It's a mouthpiece. If you enter the house, you've already been recorded. Your image, your voice, your scent. The land memorizes you. And when the voice fails to finish the ritual, the land keeps screaming. Claire backed away. The chair creaked. The husk of Marie tilted its head, just slightly. Claire ran. She didn't remember how she got there. One moment she was running through the hallway, the next she was standing in a different chamber. It was massive, far too large to fit beneath the guest house. Wooden pillars jutted up through the dirt floor. An altar stood in the middle, made of stacked stone. Bones were embedded in the walls. Skulls peered out from the dark. And standing before the altar was a mirror, old, silver-rimmed, at least 7 feet tall. Her reflection was already there, but it wasn't following her movements. It stood motionless, waiting. Claire whispered, "What are you?" The reflection smiled. "I'm the story that keeps being told." Then its mouth opened wide, far too wide, and let out a guttural, distorted version of Claire's own scream. She stumbled backward, and that's when she saw the shapes. Dozens of them, thin and quiet, watching from the corners of the cavern. Former guests? Former voices? Their eyes were blank. Their skin was tight and colourless. Each one held something, a camera, a tape, a photograph. They were archiving her. Every breath, every movement, every fear. She ran. Hours passed, or maybe just minutes. Claire tore through the tunnels until she collapsed in a crawl space filled with dust and iron piping. Her hands were bleeding, her legs trembling. There in the dirt was a ladder leading upward. She climbed it blindly, hoping it would lead outside. It did, but not where she expected. She emerged into the guest house attic. It was morning. The sunlight through the wooden slats looked normal again. She was back. On the attic floor sat an envelope. Her name was written on the front in calligraphic penmanship. She opened it. "The ritual has begun, Claire. You are the voice now. You may leave whenever you wish, but you will always return. Speak not to the living of what you saw. They'll never believe you. And if you tell the truth, the house will take them too. Warmly, Gideon." They say the town of Grafenholz was forgotten by the world long before the war ended. Tucked deep into the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest of southern Germany, it was a village built on whispers. Its half-timbered homes bowed inward as if bracing for secrets. It was 1968 when 28-year-old Dr. Elias Kübler, a sociologist from Berlin, received a grant to study post-war trauma in isolated communities. A quiet man with thinning dark hair and thick-rimmed glasses, Elias had a penchant for places that seemed to exist just outside the reach of modern light. He packed a leather case with notebooks, microcassette recorders and sleeping tablets, a habit he'd adopted since the loss of his wife, Annika, 5 years prior. Her absence clung to him like old smoke. Grafenholz was chosen because it had been inaccessible for 2 decades, the only road washed out during heavy floods in 1946. But now, finally rebuilt, it was open again. Almost too suddenly. Elias didn't find it on any modern maps. The only record of it came from a regional archivist who gave him a knowing look and said, "You're going there? People don't leave Grafenholz unchanged." He arrived in the afternoon. The village was surrounded by towering evergreens, their trunks narrow and dark, bending toward the road as if curious who would dare come. There were no signs, no welcome, just 12 buildings, all of them ancient. The air smelled of damp pine and chimney soot. It was eerily quiet. The villagers, those few he saw, looked out from behind lace curtains, not unfriendly, but expectant, as though they'd been waiting. The innkeeper, a woman named Margareta Dusek, greeted him with a stiff nod. "You'll want the top floor, room 3. It's warmer." The inn, like everything else, was old but clean. The wood floors creaked like voices. He settled in and began his recordings. Over the next 2 weeks, Elias interviewed several locals. Frau Holtz, an 84-year-old who claimed she remembered the Great Silence of 1944, when the entire town reportedly fell mute for 3 days without explanation. Otto Wins, the village carpenter, who insisted the town's founding documents had been burned in 1938 and never rewritten. A young girl named Leni, who asked Elias if his dreams had changed yet. He noted discrepancies in timelines. People spoke of events that didn't match public records. Some described winters that had never happened, or claimed a fire consumed the church in 1959. But Elias had walked past the church that very morning, perfectly intact. The townspeople all spoke in hushed tones of the sealed house. On his 15th day, Elias found it. At the northern edge of the village, just before the forest swallowed the last cobbled lane, stood a house with boarded windows and an iron chain across the door, sealed with a wax emblem. The roof had collapsed in places, and ivy curled along the beams like veins, but the foundation was solid. "What happened there?" Elias asked Margareta. She gave him a long look. "That was the Gessler house. They all vanished in 1945, same night. Vanished how? Went to sleep, never came out. No one saw them leave. No one saw anyone enter. When we finally opened the door, nothing but beds, still made. Food on the table, untouched. No bodies, no signs of struggle. You boarded it after that? No, she whispered. It boarded itself. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. The dream came as it always did. Annika, standing in the hallway of their old apartment, her back to him, whispering something he couldn't hear. But this time, when he reached for her, she turned, and she had no face. He jolted awake to find the air in his room freezing. His recorder, which he left on the desk, was running. He never turned it on. He played back the tape. It had captured 13 minutes of whispering. Indecipherable, but layered, like a room full of people murmuring just beyond the wall. His hand trembled as he stopped the tape. The next day, Elias returned to the sealed house. He examined the wax emblem on the chain. It was stamped with a symbol he didn't recognize, a triangle inside a circle with what looked like a spiral flame at its core. He took out his notebook to sketch it, but found the page already drawn. He flipped back. So were the last 5 pages, all sketched in his own hand. Symbols, diagrams, words in no language he recognized. He hadn't drawn them. He stared at his own handwriting and felt the air thin around him. That night, he returned with a crowbar. Something in him needed to know. The curiosity that drove his research had now mutated into something darker, an obsession, heavy and wet in the chest. He pried the chain loose. The wax shattered like glass. Inside, the house smelled of wet earth and burnt herbs. Dust lay untouched, furniture perfectly preserved, the bed still made. He explored the kitchen, then the narrow hallway, then the stairs. On the second floor, he found a study, papers on the desk undisturbed since 1945. He picked up a notebook. The writing was clean, precise. Dear Elias, it read, "We're so glad you've returned." At the far end of the second floor was a narrow door, padlocked, burned around the edges. Elias's heart pounded as he stared at it. He heard something move behind it, soft, like someone shifting in bed. He stepped closer, put his ear to the door, and heard Annika's voice. "Don't leave me here again, Ely." He stumbled backward. Suddenly, footsteps from downstairs. He turned, no one there. He ran, out into the forest, not back to the inn, just into the trees, away. He didn't know how long he ran. The trees seemed to shift, closing behind him. His breath turned ragged. The forest felt alive, watching. He saw flashes in the dark, pale figures just beyond the branches, whispers that seemed to come from inside his skull. Then, ahead, a clearing, and in the center of it, a mirror. 6 feet tall, ornate. The same mirror he had seen in dreams since Annika died. He walked toward it, slowly, numb. His reflection didn't move, it just watched. Then it smiled. Elias stood before the mirror, its surface clouded with something like smoke. His breath fogged the glass, and for a moment he saw a second reflection behind his own, that of Annika holding his shoulders, her mouth to his ear. But when he turned, no one was there. Behind him, the forest grew quieter. No wind, no birds, no rustling. Just the mirror and the silence of the trees. He reached forward and touched the glass. It rippled. He jerked his hand back. The surface became still again, except for his reflection, which was now smiling, though his own lips had not moved. The other Elias raised a hand and pointed behind him. Elias turned. The trees behind him had vanished. In their place stood a tall figure dressed in what looked like an old priest's cassock. Its head was wrapped in black cloth. No eyes, no face, just a stitched seam where the mouth should be. The figure tilted its head slowly and then vanished. By the time Elias stumbled back into Grafenholz, dawn had broken. His coat was torn. His glasses cracked. Mud caked his shoes. The inn was silent. Margaretti was waiting at the door. "You saw it, didn't you?" she asked. He didn't answer. "They always go to the mirror first. That's how they call you." "Who?" he asked hoarsely. "Not who. What?" Margaretti invited him into the kitchen and poured hot tea. Grafenholz was built around it, she said. The old ones brought the mirror with them. It was part of the pact. Keep it sealed, feed it whispers, never reflect your own name to it. Elias blinked. What does that mean? Names carry weight. In reflection, they root. If you see yourself and say your own name, you begin to fade. Fade? Like the Jesslers, like the archivist who sent you here. His heart pounded. What are you saying? Margaret set down the teacup. You were never supposed to come, but now that you have, it's awake. Over the next days, things began to shift. Elias's journals contained pages he hadn't written. Maps of the village that didn't match reality. Dates changed, names rearranged. He saw his reflection in windows and puddles, always a second behind his own movements. Whispers echoed through the floorboards at night. He dreamed of the attic door, of Annika calling for him behind it. One morning he woke to find the mirror from the forest in his room, propped against the wall. Only it wasn't a dream. It was real. He touched it. It was warm. A group of villagers, 5 in total, visited him that evening. They called themselves Die Hüter, the keepers. Among them was Otto Winz, the carpenter, and Lenny's grandmother, who introduced herself as Agatha. They spoke of the old pact, signed in 1744 by the town founders to bind an ancient force beneath the village. A thing of mirrors and mouths, it had offered safety from war, plague, and time itself, in exchange for memory. Every few years a sacrifice was made, not a death, but an offering of identity. They go willingly, Agathe said. Those who are lost, the grief-stricken, the unstable, the desperate. She looked at Elias. You were chosen the moment you wrote your wife's name in your journal. They took him that night to the church basement. Beneath the altar, behind a false wall, was a chamber lined with broken mirrors, shards embedded in the stone. In the centre, a stone pedestal, atop which sat a small obsidian mirror, framed in twisted bone. This is the root, Otto said. The mouth that feeds the others. If it knows your name, it takes you. Elias stared into it. For a moment he saw nothing. Then his own face, then Annika's, then both. The mirror began to pulse as if breathing. You must seal it again, Agatha said. Write your wife's name backward. Say your own name forward. Only then can you reverse the tether. He hesitated. He saw his reflection whisper something. Then he spoke. Elias Kubler. The mirrors screamed. Glass cracked. The air turned thick. And something moved beneath the stones. He ran. He didn't remember how he got there, but suddenly he was in the Gessler house, standing before the attic door. It was open now. Darkness seeped from the stairs. He climbed. Each step groaned beneath him. The air grew colder. At the top, a room filled with furniture draped in sheets, candles burned in a circle, and in the centre, Annika, pale, smiling, waiting. You found me, she whispered. He stepped forward. You're not real. Real enough, she said, reaching out. Just say it, say my name. He hesitated. She took his hand. Please, Elias, I'm cold. He opened his mouth. Then stopped. He pulled away. You're not her. She's dead. The figure blinked, then hissed, a sound like shattering glass. Its face cracked, splintered down the middle, and from beneath the skin, a mirror emerged. The house shook. Downstairs, voices screamed. The attic windows shattered inward. Elias turned and ran. He threw himself down the stairs, through the hallway, out into the street. Behind him, the Gessler house folded in on itself, collapsing like paper. From the rubble, a final whisper rose. We'll wait for you, Elias. You'll come back. They always do. Elias didn't stop running until the village lights had disappeared behind the pines. He barely remembered navigating the trail, barely felt the scrapes across his arms from low branches or the stones underfoot. All he knew was the burning in his lungs and the echo of that inhuman whisper buried in his skull. It wasn't just a sound. It was inside him now. When he finally reached the old road at the foot of the hill, his car was still parked where he'd left it. Dusty, cold. The passenger window covered in a smear, a handprint. He flinched. Keys, ignition, lights, engine stuttering to life. He tore down the mountain road, tires screeching across gravel. The rearview mirror vibrated with static, and in the glass he saw himself, smiling again. He checked into a hotel in Stuttgart near the main station under a false name. Elias Kubler had to disappear. He used an old ID and paid in cash. The clerk didn't question him. His room was cold, sterile, safe for now. He sat on the bed, turned on his recorder and began to speak. Field report. Day 11. Subject, Grafenholz. I've left the town. Subjective reality is compromised. Memory and reflection manipulation possible. Effects persistent. He paused, then played it back. The recording was garbled. His voice warbled like tape run backwards. Left the town. Left the town. Left the... We see you, town. He dropped the recorder. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We remember your name. Elias retreated to the university archives under an alias, requesting microfilm, birth registries and census rolls. He needed to trace the true origin of Grafenholz beyond the town's curated folklore. He discovered the region had once been the site of a medieval monastery, destroyed in 1306 under suspicious circumstances, rumors of heretical rituals, a split order. a mirror cult. Names appeared again and again in the records. Wexler, Kubler, Gessler, family lines tied to both Elias and the village. He followed a paper trail through land deeds and property transfers, and one document stood out, dated 1843. In return for memory, we will be spared. Keep the gate veiled. Let it eat what is forgotten. Signed, the Five. He recognized the names. The same keepers who had greeted him in the town. Each night brought visions. He walked endless hallways lined with mirrors, each reflecting a version of himself. Happy, weeping, decaying, burned. In one dream, Annika lay in a hospital bed, eyes open but glassy, murmuring, "You left me there. I called for you." He tried to reach her, but his hands passed through glass. When he woke, his bedsheets were damp and cold, like lake water. There was mud on the carpet. He hadn't left the room. On a rainy afternoon, Elias sat in a corner of a quiet cafe, trying to sketch what he remembered of the Gessler attic. As he sipped from his mug, the ceramic cracked. Dark liquid poured onto his notes. Then he looked up. Across from him, seated alone at a table, was a little skin. Long, dark hair. Familiar, leany. But she shouldn't be here. She raised a hand and slowly pressed her palm against the window pane beside her. Then she whispered. Though the glass should have muted her words, Elias heard them clearly. "It's not in the town anymore. It's in you." Elias fled the cafe, down the street, into the rain. He stopped at a clothing store's display window, needing to see his own reflection to reassure himself he was real. His face stared back, then blinked. But he hadn't. He watched in horror as his reflection tilted its head, peeled back its cheek, and revealed a glimmering mirror surface beneath the skin. Then it mouthed words silently, "Come back." Elias sought help. Desperation pushed him to Dr. Lena Koenig, a trauma specialist who'd been recommended by an old university contact. He told her a version of the truth. Dreams, hallucinations, a wife he'd lost, a town he couldn't forget. She listened carefully. "Trauma can manifest in the form of displaced guilt," she said. "You might be personifying your grief as a place. A mirror is the perfect symbol. It reflects what we cannot face." "But I didn't imagine the mirror," he insisted. "Or the people." She raised an eyebrow. "If I came with you to this town, would I see what you saw?" Elias hesitated. "I don't know. It's changed. It follows." "May I record our sessions?" she asked. He nodded. The next session, she asked him to look into a hand mirror. The moment he did, the lights flickered, and from her desk drawer, a tape recorder switched on by itself. It played static. Then a voice. "You are not her. She is not gone. Return." Dr. Koenig turned pale. That wasn't a file I ever recorded. They returned to the university together. But when Elias led her to the archive room he had used just days ago, they found it sealed off, the hallway charred with fire damage. A sign posted, "Section closed, structural damage." Elias turned to the assistant archivist. "When did this happen?" 2 weeks ago, she replied. "An electrical fire. Lost everything from the 1700s through early 1900s. But he had been there only 3 days ago." He began to hear Annika's voice even while awake, in mirrors, in windows, in puddles. He turned off all screens, covered reflective surfaces. Dr. Koenig called it psychosis. He began writing compulsively, her name over and over, backward and forward in notebooks on walls, even carved into soap. Then one night he awoke to find Annika standing at the foot of the bed. She was soaked, pale, her voice rasped. "You never came for me, but I waited. I waited." He couldn't move, couldn't speak. Then he realized she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the mirror behind him.